I always thought I hated it here. Now I'm afraid to leave.
Sequestered in the Forbidden City.
Isn't he a little old to suck that titty?
I am Zero.
And I am the Wiz! Zero, how you doing today?
Doing alright. Right now, this is being recorded right around the Christmas holiday, so things are a little crazy at my day job with a bunch of people about to take off on Christmas and New Year's vacation, so a lot of chaos going on with it. Lock in their projects before they jump out the door.
Yeah, we are recording this 7 days before Christmas. Let's get into the movie we're reviewing, which is The Last Emperor, the 1987 Oscar-winning film by Bernardo Bertolucci. There is a reason why I chose this to watch with you. A part of it is I really wondered if you've heard of this movie before. Did you before I selected this?
It was one that I've been meaning to watch, especially due to the historical significance and everything. For anyone who isn't aware, this movie is based on a book with a very similar name, and it was the 1964 autobiography from the last emperor of China. I think the title, if you translate it from Chinese to English, translates to From Emperor to Citizen, the autobiography of Aisen Jioro Puyi. So for me, this one was kind of one that had been on my list to go see, mostly because of the fact that just it covers a very, very interesting period in China when you have the Chinese dynastic empires finally fall. The rise of the Chinese Republic happens, then it goes into the period of Japanese takeover of China during World War II, and then after that gets into the communist rule that basically still exists to this day in modern-day China.
Why don't we get down to what our thoughts of the film was? Zero, go right ahead.
This film was interesting. It seems to stick semi-close to the accounts of the last emperor of China, and it's kind of interesting because, of course, like in the beginning, he's just a kid sort of thrown into this role. He's completely afraid because he's being suddenly whisked away from home and being thrown into the Forbidden City with his mother and a few of their family and a bunch of their eunuchs and retainers. And then when we get to like the teenager and young adult phase of his life, it just becomes like unbridled arrogance, and then things start to just get tilted completely off kilter and everything. And then you get into the period of decadence during the rise of the Chinese Republic. Then there's more decadence during the Chinese being taken over by the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. And then you kind of get this interesting sort of fall from grace chapter towards the end when the Communist Party takes power.
It's a film that, the way I would say it, it's telling a personal story in an epic way. There is an epic feeling to the film, and that's mainly because of how the film looks. There's a lot of vibrant color to it, a lot of expensive sets, a lot of expensive costume design, which looks incredible in this movie. It's just funny to watch a movie that is a very personal story, but has this epic, grand feel to it, what I thought was really interesting to watch. I'm going to go back into the visuals here because I think the visuals are the most important thing about this film because it accentuates the main character's situation as the film goes on. You mentioned the decadence throughout the entire first half of the film, probably more than that. And it's interesting how in like the first act of the film, there's a lot of yellows, reds, just a lot of ornate color stylings in the film. And then as the film goes on, there is color, but it's more muted. It's a little more dark until the end where it's gray. It is drab. It is, and it really matches the plight and what Puyi is going through throughout the film. And I think the way that the film is shot color-wise was really well done.
The color theming is just kind of spectacular in the beginning, and it really just kind of encapsulates the opulence of the Chinese dynastic empires. And then kind of as you get into China getting into modernity, you see kind of like more muted colors, more English style clothing and things like that. And then you get into the Communist Party takeover phase of the movie. It's kind of the usual Communist Party style, plain proletariat style suits and everything. Real drab, real gray, nothing too ornate. It's really interesting because this is also reflected in Puyi as he kind of goes through the story and everything, because as a kid he's just dressed in very, very opulent silks and things like that. And then you see the clothing kind of changes as he goes through these particular chapters in his life. Like when he's in the communist re-education camp, he's just put into some very drab and shabby clothes, and you just kind of think on it and you're just like, wow, holy cow. He went from the peak of opulence to having it all taken away from him and being essentially a prisoner in his own country, essentially.
The story is basically of a sequestered, spoiled person and his inability to adapt and understand the world around him. I think that is the main draw of the film for me. I feel bad for the guy, even though I don't think he was a good guy. But the way the film really shows what was going on around him is that he wasn't necessarily a bad person, but that's how he was taught to be. Basically because he was given everything he wanted. He was basically treated like a god, so no matter what he did, he would not get punished. They say that in the film. If he does something wrong, somebody else gets punished. Another scene that really hit it home was when someone was tying his shoes in the camp, and he was separated from them, and how useless he felt. And how he had to be told how to pee to not bother anybody. It was just like, wow, that's how sheltered this guy was. It was really something that I really didn't think about until those scenes were there, and I was like, oh wow, I just didn't realize. Like, I realized he was spoiled, but I didn't realize exactly how spoiled and how sequestered he was.
It's kind of funny because seeing those sorts of moments where he basically is just kind of shown up with just how completely out of touch with human beings he was and everything like that, it kind of reminded me of some of the stories from some of the European dynasties where you'd have just some royal princes and just be completely out of touch with the ordinary people, or being unable to do things that even ordinary people are able to do. Just it sort of brought back a lot of parallels of things that I remember one of my European history teachers talking about back in high school. As with every movie that I've watched, usually I'll do some supplemental research after watching the movie and everything. Kind of an interesting thing was when this movie was being prepared for theater showings in Japan, apparently the Shochiku Fuji company ended up editing the 30-second sequence that depicted the horrific rape of Nanking incident from World War II out of the movie. And apparently Bertolucci had no idea that this happened. And apparently when he found out, he was furious. When word got around that he had heard about this whole little creative edit, the Shochiku Fuji company ended up restoring this. And they wrote a PR blast basically saying that the reason that this happened was there was confusion and misunderstanding. And basically the reason that they did it was they felt that the rape of Nanking sequence was supposedly too much of a hot button topic for Japanese moviegoers, apparently. So I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Holy cow. I can see where the sensibilities are, because even now, I think the rape of Nanking is kind of still a hot button issue in modern day Japan as well. Yeah, I can definitely see why a Japanese company doing the localization for the movie would have maybe clipped that scene out. But at the same time, I'm also on Bertolucci's side of, hey, you're censoring my art. What the fuck?
Yeah, censoring of art from different countries is something that happens more and more nowadays too. Great example is Disney with some of their movies. They have to change them for different markets, such as Saudi Arabia and China specifically, for specific movies. That's not really new, but usually they tell them they have to do that. But I will say this though, when I saw those scenes, I was like, whoa, that's brutal. It's funny how this film is steeped in the history of China, especially with this person and things that happened in that time. And yet every character, with the exception of some background characters, all speak English. I know I discussed this with you after I watched it yesterday, but I still can't get over the fact that the one thing that I had a problem with the film is, even though I don't speak or understand a lick of Chinese, it just feels odd that it's not in Chinese. This would have been a film I would have been fine with watching it with subtitles. But when I watched it, and it was like, oh, wait, it's all in English? And I stopped the movie, and I'm like, hold on. Did I give the dub version? Oh, let me check. And I'm like, nope, it's in English. Like, weird. Did that feel weird to you at all?
Yeah, because as said, I had never got around to watching this movie, and I was just like, oh, it's about the last Chinese emperor. Okay, interesting. This is probably going to be interesting, because while I don't have complete comprehension of Mandarin Chinese, I know enough to at least get by. And I'm just sitting here like mentally preparing myself, going, they're probably just going to start spitting off just Mandarin right from the get-go. And then I was like, well, hold on a second. English?
All right, so before we get into our ratings, let me get into what other places thought about the movie. Letterboxd users have this at a 3.9 out of 5. Rotten Tomatoes has this at an 86% fresh. And this won 9 Oscars. All the Oscars that it was nominated for, it won, including Best Picture and Best Director. Zero, what is your rating on The Last Emperor?
4 out of 5. It's a fantastic movie. Just the use of colors, just amazing. I think where things take a little bit of a knock on the score is how some phases of Puyi's life are just kind of just rushed through. In some ways, it just seems like they get to a phase of his life and they're trying to just give you the feel of it, but they don't really give you much sort of like contextual explaining, especially if you're not familiar with the subject matter. And I think that's where things get a little weak, but overall, I still think it's a fantastic movie. I thought the ending was kind of interesting, especially when he goes to the Forbidden City, becoming a tourist attraction, and showing the kid, hey, I can prove to you that I was once the son of heaven, and then finds his old pet cricket just hiding in the throne room and gives the cricket container to the kid. And when the kid tries to find where Puyi's gone, he kind of vanishes. And then you just see the sort of transition to, I'm guessing, what would be like the 80s or early 90s. You just see a woman leading a tour guide group to the Forbidden City and then just kind of going to the throne and literally just kind of summing the last emperor of China's life in 2 sentences. It's just like, wow, holy cow. Went from son of heaven with all the opulence he could ever have to just being relegated to just an ordinary citizen, and his life summed up by a tourist guide in 2 sentences. Holy cow, what a downfall.
It's fascinating to watch. Like, he was the most important person in the world, in that country, and then he's just a footnote in their history at this point. It's really interesting. I agree with you. I give it a 4 out of 5 as well. I think the visuals are beautiful. I think there are good performances in the film. I think the story itself is fascinating in multiple ways, and how the visuals really help enhance the story is very well done on this, and I think Bertolucci did an incredible job on this. That said, I still find it weird that it's in English and not in Chinese. I think if I watch it again, I think I'll be fine with it, but it just seems like this type of movie where I'm expecting this to be in Chinese. When everyone talks in English, it's just weird. That being said, a lot of people who have a problem with watching foreign films because it's in a different language, I think might enjoy this. I think if they will give it a shot, they would like this very much. So Zero, you give this a 4 out of 5?
Yes, 4 out of 5.
And I do as well. Zero, thank you for joining us.
Yep, and thank you for introducing me to watching this movie.
Oh, so good, wasn't it? Oh, man.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching. See you guys next time. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like it. If you didn't, please subscribe. And if you have questions or comments, go ahead and leave a comment whether you liked it or not. It just helps, you know. If you want my written reviews, you can go onto my letterbox at IamThatWiz, or you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. Thank you very much again for watching. See you next time.